Hey foodies, welcome into another video. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different because these last few days what I've been doing is a lot of discussion videos about the health of the game and issues with the game, and what I wanted to do now was something a little more in my wheelhouse. You know, I used to do a lot of ranking videos and list videos and things of that nature, so I wanted to turn back the clock a little bit and do one of those, but with a more modern twist to it. In the past, I feel like my videos almost had a almost a Watch Mojo like vibe to them, where it was going to be number one, and that's not really what I'm looking to do here. I'm looking to have a more casual discussion about it, but I am going to stick to maybe the conventions of that style of video, and I'm going to give you a top 5 here. And today we're looking at the top 5 characters DBD should not add. So the general concept behind this list was that I hear a lot about, oh, well, here's a killer DBD should add, here's a survivor they should add, here are characters we want to see in the game. And sometimes I agree and sometimes I disagree. So what I wanted to do here was I wanted to go through a few of them that I've heard tossed out there that frankly I just don't think the game should add. And it's for various reasons. Before we get going though, I do want to give a quick shout out to an honorable mention. That honorable mention is not a specific character, but it is anything from Netflix. So with the Demogorgon, obviously they added it, they added Steve, they added Nancy, it was a Stranger Things chapter, and it was a smashing success. As I recall, the game has never grown as much as it did when they added the Stranger Things chapter. So, what's the problem? Well, as you probably know by now, Netflix decided they wanted to get into gaming themselves, so instead of just leaving well enough alone, they actually did not re-up the deal to let the Demogorgon and the other characters stay in Dead by Daylight. So, we lost Hawkins, we lost the Demogorgon, and we lost Steve and Nancy. This was an unbelievably uncool move on Netflix's part. While totally legal, it is something that has really greatly dampened my view of the company, and I'm kind of hard-pressed to support anything they do in the future. It's a real bummer. I think it was about as uncool as anything they could have done in regards to their licenses, and I think that behavior would be rather foolish to work with them again. Because, you know, it's the old adage, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Which basically translates to, if you trick me one time, it's not my fault. If you trick me twice, it becomes my fault. And I think that behavior would do really well to avoid Netflix as a whole. No matter what booming properties they may come out with in the near future, I don't see that as a partnership they should even consider entertaining again. With the lone exception that if Netflix says, hey, we would like to relicense the Demogorgon, I think that'd be great. I think if they could add the Demogorgon, Steve, Nancy, Hawkins, all that back to the game, great. But that's more so around the thought that players who didn't have a chance to buy them might actually be able to grab the characters, because I don't have any faith that they'll actually honor their commitment this next time around. So that's the honorable mention. Let's move on to the list, starting with number 5, Mr. X and Lady Dimitrescu from the Resident Evil series. Now, I am a massive Resident Evil fan, and I think that the series as a whole has a lot to offer Dead by Daylight. However, when I say that Mr. X and Lady Dimitrescu should not be included, there are 2 caveats that need to be made. Firstly, I am including these 2 specifically because they're the 2 I hear brought up the most, but this applies to any other character from not from DBD, from Resident Evil. So if you are talking about the Baker family, or maybe you want to go with an earlier entry, I just don't think that anybody else needs to be added. Nemesis is enough. Now, the second caveat I want to put out there is that I am not referring to the concept of legendary skins, of sets, right? If they wanted to add Lady Dimitrescu and Mr. X as set skins, I would be all for that. And I understand that some people have the issue of saying, oh, well, they don't actually have the same Nemesis parasite. Which obviously, if you don't know, if you haven't played the game, Nemesis is not the big hulking behemoth that chases after you. Nemesis is the little tentacle. So I realized that some people would say, oh, well, they don't have Nemesis. However, I think that's one of those things we could overlook to get 2 fan favorite characters in the game. I just don't think they need their own entry. They do not need to be a future DLC, a future chapter or paragraph, right? I am all for Lady Dimitrescu and Mr. X being in the game as skins, but I think they need to operate just like Nemesis and be a part of that character. I do not think they need to waste the time developing an entirely new chapter around these characters. Number 4, we move on to the Leprechaun. Now, there has been a lot of talk about getting characters like Chucky in the game, and obviously the Leprechaun faces some of the same issues of being rather small in stature and from rather goofy films. However, I'm all for Chucky being added. I think Chucky is a very important piece of horror history, and that would be a chapter I would rather like to see in the game. In the case of the Leprechaun though, I worry that that would be jumping the shark for behavior. If you don't know, jumping the shark references the concept of getting past the point of being cool once you hit that part of being stale and a shell of your former self. And I think that a Leprechaun chapter or paragraph would be just, I don't think it'd be well received. I don't think that this is a character with enough going for it to be added into the game. Obviously, it would be humorous to see the Leprechaun, but I do think behavior needs to be careful, and I think they need to be wary of adding any chapter that is not going to actively benefit the game. And I cannot imagine a world where more than, let's say, 5 people actually buy the game to play the Leprechaun. I think that the only way this chapter would be worth buying is if they gave the Leprechaun a really cool power. And honestly, if they came up with a really cool power, I would much rather just see them use it on an original character, even if it is maybe Irish inspired or something like that. But I just don't think the upside is there for a Leprechaun chapter. So I really hope this is one that they avoid in the future, because I think that it's going to cost them more than it's going to help them. Moving along to number 3, this one is going to include a specific character, but then also kind of a blanket term. So it's going to be Slenderman and also any creepypastas. Now, I know that a Slenderman chapter has been talked about in the past, and admittedly, it was kind of hard for me to put Slender on here because I realized that Slender Awakening or whatever it was, the game where you go around and you find the sheets of paper. I played it. I can't say I had a great time doing it, but you know, it was an important piece of gaming history, especially horror gaming history. And I realized that they may want to pay homage by bringing Slender in here, but I would advise them not to do that. And if they're going to do any creepypasta, it needs to be Slenderman, but I would say avoid creepypastas as a whole, largely for the same reason that I think they should avoid Leprechaun. Creepypastas have not aged particularly well. I mean, it's gotten to the point of them being so ridiculous that you have, the internet historian, I think it was on his incognito mode channel, where he just read the Jeff the Killer creepypasta without adding anything, and it was hilarious because it's so poorly written, it's so bad. And that's the case for almost every creepypasta. These are not amazing works of fiction that you would be silly to leave out. This is not, this is not something as respected as, say, It, which is written by a legitimate author who told a legitimate story. Creepypastas, while a good outlet for artistic expression, were largely written by children and poor authors. And by poor, I don't mean financially, obviously. I'm talking about poor as in their penmanship left a lot to be desired. I don't think the Dead by Daylight needs anything from the creepypasta community. However, I realize this is going to be one that some people are going to vehemently disagree on because of the importance of creepypastas in the, the overall history of the internet. I am not interested in seeing it, but this is one more so than any of the others that I would be interested to hear down below if you disagree or agree with me. Next up, we have number 2, and this is one that I was previously in favor of, but in recent months, I have realized I actually would not like to see this all that much, and that is Sidney Prescott or any Scream character. Now, we already have Ghostface in the game, even though it's important to note that he is the Ghostface, a legally distinct version the game can get away with. And the reason I don't want to see Sidney Prescott is not because I don't like the character, or because I don't like Neve Campbell or anything like that. Neve Campbell is very talented, Sidney Prescott's a great character, and the Scream series is actually one of my favorite horror franchises of them all. I am very excited for the upcoming film. However, the issue about adding the Scream license to the game is that we already have Ghostface, and the situation they have right now is very advantageous for behavior. They do not have to work with big movie studios who have been notoriously difficult to work with in the past for this game. Obviously, behavior comes under flack for a lot of things, but what I don't think a lot of people realize is some of the things we criticize behavior for are actually them just having to do the wishes of these big studios. So if you're upset that you haven't seen a Freddy Krueger skin added to the game, behavior's probably upset about it too, but they can't. They cannot add skins without getting approval from the license holders. So because the Scream mask itself is held by a different license holder than the Ghostface character that we know from the Scream franchise, adding Sidney Prescott would jeopardize that. It would potentially lead to a situation where what we end up with is license issues, where all of a sudden, when they want to add a new Ghostface skin, like they did for the winter event, they have to go through, I think Paramount owns Ghostface, I mean, on Scream, maybe I'm wrong there, but I think it's Paramount. Whoever it is, they have to go through that company and say, hey, can we add a new skin? And it would seem that more often than not, the answer is no, because most licensed characters really have not gotten much in the way of skins. You know, some of them have. Some of them certainly have, but which is one reason it was so surprising that Netflix pulled what they did, because it was actually the Stranger Things chapter that was getting a lot of DLC, a lot of cosmetics. So it was very weird to see that pulled. But the reason I don't want to see Sidney Prescott added is essentially to protect what we have with Ghostface, which is a legally safe version of the character that does not have to go through studio interference. All they have to do is go through the current license holders, who have been absolutely lovely from everything I can tell. And I would like to see that stay how it is, because I think we've gotten a lot of really fun Ghostface skins. That being said, I'm a huge fan of the Scream movies, and if they did decide to add Sidney Prescott, I think I could find myself getting over it. I just think that overall it would actually end up being a net negative. And lastly, we're going to move into number one, and this one is not a super fun one to talk about, but you know, it can't be left out of a list like this. So number one is the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. Now, look, one thing I want to acknowledge that I don't hear acknowledged a lot is you are allowed to enjoy Jeepers Creepers as a franchise. You are. And there's kind of been this, I don't know, almost this retelling where it's like, well, if you enjoy Jeepers Creepers, that means you support, you know. And that's not inherently true. If you grew up watching these films and you're a big fan, you're allowed to like the films. However, for those who do not know, Victor Salva, who wrote Jeepers Creepers, is a convicted fan of children, we will say. And I don't think Dead by Daylight needs to associate with Jeepers Creepers in any way, even if the rumors are true and Salva is completely removed from the newest Jeepers Creepers. I just think it's a bridge better left uncrossed. This is not a direction they need to go. The Creeper is not going to bring in enough players to justify the controversy that would undoubtedly arise from adding this character. And make no mistake about it, people would be upset. And from what I can see, justifiably so. There are very few things in life that I would say 99% of all living humans can agree on, right? That's just not, that's not something that realistically you can find people who agree on that kind of thing. But the crimes that Victor Salva was found guilty of are one of those things that most everybody can come together and say, not only is that wrong, that is extremely wrong. And I just don't see a world where Dead by Daylight is better off by having the Creeper involved. Again, you are allowed to enjoy those films if they mean a lot to you, but I just don't think this is a killer that behavior should pursue. There is no upside to this. This is a character that would bring a hellstorm of media scrutiny to the game at a time where things are going generally well for the game. And I don't see a world where they do that. If they thought the backlash for the Pinhead NFT was bad, at least they were able to shelve that one off and say, well, we didn't really make the NFT, so why are you mad at us? But this would be their decision to add the character of the Creeper into the game, and I just don't see them recovering from that. I think that would really, really open the door for a competitor to possibly take some of their market share. And that's going to do it for me. A bit of a bummer to end on the Creeper. I think that it was important to put him at number one. I would be very, very against seeing the Creeper ever added to the game. But let me know down below, do you think that there's an angle of this that I'm not seeing, that a lot of people aren't seeing? Maybe there's a world in which the Creeper makes sense for the game and I'm just not seeing it. So if you do feel that way, please do let me know. As always, I've been Das Food, and until next time, bye friends.